I want to establish the history of what happened and why we have welfare and understand, because there's a dual element here, right? It was cheaper. It was better healthcare, and government regulation destroyed it. Specifically with the National Fraternal Congress, they basically, in order to stop having doctors taken out of licenses and no longer being able to work with them, they worked with Congress in order to negotiate rates.
I'm going to jump ahead to something that might be potential agreement then, okay?
Okay, yeah, sure.
So basically, if you're saying that since the early 20th century, we had a privatized system that was better. The federal government stepped in during a time of great economic depression. That's kind of when a lot of this, got cemented into the American fabric. You can say
the two aren't necally connected, but they happened at similar times. Yeah.
Sure. But basically, the reason why I'm resistant as somebody who is pro welfare, I guess you could say in some way, that it would be better if we went back to the lodge system or we went back to the fraternal order system. Okay.
Yeah.
Do it. But here's the thing.
Well, it's illegal, and the government is providing these services with taxes.
It's illegal for you to become a part of the Masons, and then as a part of the Masons or another fraternal society, it's impossible for you to pay dues into a system that gives you cheaper health care.
So what was made illegal, and what is, is it illegal to do that? You're right. It's not technically illegal to engage in that services.
Yeah, we could do that. But it is illegal for Tim Cast healthcare program.
It is illegal for them to own hospitals. It is illegal for them to negotiate for doctor salaries without following specific rates set by the government. It is illegal there's massive loopholes and regulations in the healthcare industry, right? It is the most regulated industry in America is healthcare and drugs, right? So the government stepping in on behalf of doctors because healthcare costs were too cheap, and they were under threat because in Pennsylvania, Michigan, California, Maine, and Vermont, doctors associations and medical associations were doing everything they could to get rid of these people. Now, you said you want to tie it to the culture, and here's the thing: is that it's what was the healthcare lodge doing? It wasn't just giving people insurance. It wasn't just giving people their medical care. What it was doing is it was communally bringing men together to discuss. When Bob lost his job, everybody would go to the lodge and they would say, hell, Bob lost his job. Anybody know anybody that can hire? There was a communal aspect of mutual aid.
But this gets into, yeah, sure. And I love mutual aid. I love community. I love all the things that you're talking about. But the thing is, what I think Tim jumped to, which would be my point, is that we had something pre-World War II, which was the Great Depression, which was like a insane economic moment. We're probably experiencing one of those insane economic moments now. We did experience an insane economic moment in 2008. And the truth is that the fraternal orders were not enough in order to deal with it. So there was public outcry. Hey, there's old people starving. Hey, there's young people starving. Hey, there's people who can't get medical care. We need a bigger organization in order to step in order to provide these services.
Let me fail. I'll tell you.
I want to ask a follow-up question.
Okay.
Sure.
What's wrong with leaving the elderly to their own devices?
They're going to die horribly.
Right. What's wrong with it?
I like old people.
So what is the logical reason? What is the functional mechanical reason that we should create a government system to protect the lives of individuals who are unable to take their own?
Yes. Okay. So you're going to have to give me a little bit of latitude. Okay. All right. So this is part of my problem with libertarianism. This is part of my problem with individualism. I'm not a collectivist. I'm a communitarian. I think there's a balance between the individual and the collective. Okay? We are not born alone. We are born with nurses, doctors, family members taking care of us. We also do not die alone. Ideally, we have doctors, nurses, family members taking care of us as we die. And so what would happen in a healthy, reciprocal society is that we would say that we know we are born. We know that we die. We know there's a whole thing in between. We want to make every single aspect of a human life the best that it maximally can be at every step of the way. Therefore, we're not just talking about rights. We're also talking about responsibilities. And so one of the responsibilities, I have grandparents. They have passed on now. One of the responsibilities of children is to see their parents out in a good way. One of the responsibilities of a community is to take care of old people when they're on their way out.
Okay, can I respond to that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that you just said, which is why you should abolish Social Security and go back to private systems.
Pass.
And so let me explain, right? The best data that we have because we're not looking at elderly poverty rates until we're not tracking most things until the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913, right? So economic data is scarce, right? But the best that we have, you can look up. Cato Institute did a piece on this, support of the elderly before the Depression, right? And if you want to look up more about fraternal societies, read David T. Beddoes' book, From Mutual Aid to the Welfare State, Fraternal Services and Social Services, 1890 to 1967. That's where most of this stuff is coming from, right? But we know from internal surveys, the best stuff that we can find, right? That elderly poverty, where people were in need of assistance, depending upon the different groups and societies, it looks like it's somewhere between 10 to 20% of elderly were in desperate need of help. Okay. Now in 1935, when we established the Social Security Act, right? It's April, I believe. Elderly poverty rate was about 40%. Okay, so during the Great Depression, you're right, things got so much worse. Now, of course, fraternal societies were being already shut out, destroyed, overregulated by about 1910 is when they really start coming in, pushing them out. Things get worse. But of course, the Great Depression occurred as well. Now, the claim to fame of people that say, well, Social Security's helped us so much is that between 1935 to 1960, it fell from 40% to about 35%. And then from 1960 to 1995, it went down to 10%. And now, today, it's at 11.3%. So the claim to fame is that elderly poverty, as we are now $37 trillion in debt and counting, as we have destroyed community and destroyed the natural provider role of men, destroyed communal bonds, created enemy, fucked up gender roles, moved wealth from young men, made it impossible for them to build wealth to, single moms, to the elderly, to all of these other institutions. Their claim to fame is it took us 100 years and we got ever so slightly better than what it was right before and during the Great Depression. That's fucking insane.
Why?
That's insane.
Why? You just literally said that it went from...
It took them 100 years to get right where they fucking started, that they fucked up. And by the way, the social consequences and the debt consequences have been horrendous.
But hold on, I reject this, okay?
What do you reject?
I reject the fact that 100 years ago, the fraternity and community bonds of America were, magical and better and like all this kind of crap. I fundamentally...
didn't make that argument. I made a factual argument that 1 and 3... I made a factual argument.
I don't care. I've been listening to you basically run us through the history of the early 20th century fraternal orders versus the welfare state, okay? Mm-hmm. So what I'm arguing is that all these things that we're talking about, the lack of community, the lack of fraternity, the dissolution of gender roles, which by the way I think is what I want to talk about a little bit more, is the fact that we are responsible for this. You are. I am. Tim is. These young men over here.
Hey, don't look at me. I got nothing to do with it.
No, you do. You do. You're a part of this. So whether or not we want, for instance, there's just like a anarchist concept of basically creating parallel structures to the state in order to evaporate the state's power. If you want to talk all this smack about how the welfare state is destroying society or whatever, then what you would do if you were a rich person, not that you have a whole lot of money in your checking account, but you would take that money and you would put it into creating parallel structures in order to evaporate this power. But what I hear and see consistently from very rich people who complain about these problems is they don't put their money where their mouth is. They don't give a shit about community. They don't care about creating parallel structures in order to dissolve the power of the state. They just no offense to, any particular streamer, but streamers mostly just jerk off and make money and spend money how they please.
Okay, but your argument is if you believe this, or if libertarians as a whole are right, like why aren't we creating parallel systems?
To evaporate the power of the state. If you gave a shit, then that's what you would do.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. Number one, right? 15.2% of all the money that you should be making is immediately stolen from you out of every paycheck, so that you can just for Social Security.
I reject the word stolen, but continue.
Well, I didn't fucking choose to have them take my money.
Okay.
Stolen.
I'm going to use a Stevenism. Okay. No.
What the fuck is a Stevenism?
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna use a phrase from another creator. Okay. There is no thief that breaks into your house and takes 15% of your paycheck and then gives you something in return. There's no thief that does that. So it's fundamentally a different social phenomena.
Okay, so
what? Can you elaborate what that means?
Yeah, sure. So taxes. It's very popular with libertarians to say that taxation is theft because it's not voluntary, right?
They didn't choose it. They just took it.
So what I would say is that we are effectively, in my opinion, we are in the new Rome. Okay, we are in Rome. We run a $70 trillion global commercial empire, and as a result, we get all these incredible benefits. We have access to worldwide petroleum, we have access to plastic goods, we have access to the entire world market, and so as a result, you can't calculate the benefits that you have. This entire room is covered in plastic and electronics that have been manufactured the world over. Nobody gave this to you. This is a function of the international security network that is the federal government.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.